Money. The closest thing we have to real-life monarch points, meaning it can be exchanged for goods, services, and everything in between. To say that money has cultural baggage associated with the term is the same as clarifying that gravity does indeed continue to operate on Wednesday. This does, however, mean that when we see an in-game representation of money, we tend to bring in our own preconceived notions on how to deal with money into the game, frequently to our own detriment. This can take form in many ways, which depend on your personality, on your playstyle, and your skill. And indeed, by making this video, I'm not claiming to be myself immune to these concepts. But what I find in general is that overall, most players are 1, too debt averse, meaning they don't take enough debt, or they take less debt than they honestly should. 2, players overvalue money compared to other resources, and this leads to the title of the video. 3, they keep scaling income, when they really should stop scaling income because they just have enough money. Remember, enough money is a concept that exists, and frankly, it's probably a lot less than you think it is. Right, before we do get into the rest of the video, just some usual stuff. A like would be appreciated if you haven't already, and a subscription would be amazing. This also makes for way too of a poetic moment to say that if you do happen to be suffering from excessive money, your financial support with a membership is appreciated. Look, there's cool perks, but all that self-shilling aside, let's start with identifying a pretty basic concept. Why do we need money? Well, money can be used to build buildings, hire advisors, pay for troops, pay for boats, embrace institutions, and all that good stuff. And herein lies the issue. Most campaign goals for EU4, whether a goal like completing a certain difficult achievement, or doing a world conquest, or doing a one culture, one faith, true one tag as an atheist no culture pope, and no, I'm not kidding, link to that campaign can be found on screen here. Well, those things involve buildings built, advisors hired, troops paid, and sometimes even monetary gifts to other nations sent. Some campaigns are actually directly correlated to money. For example, an income overflow campaign where you try to make more money than the game can handle, and hence integer overflow the income tab. A less tryhard version of this would be a Tour Netherlands campaign, where you develop the Netherlands and grow your colonies, and try to see how rich you can be with limited territorial holdings in Europe. In both of those cases, you should focus on money because your goal is money. But what if your goal isn't money? What if your goal is a one faith world conquest, as I don't know, Sikh, haven't seen a lot of Sikh world conquests? What if you're trying to get the Eat Your Greens achievement, or Saladin's Legacy? Sure, you need a certain amount of money from an objective point of view, to hire advisors and the such. But how much money do you actually need, need to complete that achievement, or any campaign goal you set yourself? Well, I would say significantly less than you think. The first thing is that people really underutilize debt. So you can borrow money now and pay that money back, as well as some extra money later, with the maximum amount of money you can borrow being proportional to your income. Now, there is more things going on here, of course, from burger loans to loan size, which is proportional to your development, but not your real development, meaning that loan restructuring is a thing that can happen, and at high loan counts, gaining a large amount of low autonomy development can sometimes knock you into bankruptcy. But as a general rule, more income means more potential for debt. And this potential for debt is a resource in the exact same way that your manpower or diplomatic points or papal influence points are a resource. A building that increases your income by 0.1 a month also increases your debt cap by 30 ducats, and hence not using the debt capacity you have is the same as wasting that resource or stat boost. Of course, wasting money for no reason is the same as wasting monarch points or any other resource without reason. Just because you can take debt doesn't mean you should. But considering the amount of times I've seen people genuinely struggle with money, and have that as a limiting factor, for example, struggling with admin to core, and not taking loans to run a higher level admin advice, despite being in a state where they can certainly afford to do that, just because they fear the concept of debt is concerning. The one exception these people tend to have is taking debt for institution embracement. For some reason, that's a weird exception that you're just kind of allowed to do. But I'll let you in on a little secret. You can take loans for more than just institutions. Another issue in a similar vein that occurs from this is that people end up in situations where they've overscaled their income, so they've overbuilt production manufactories, for example, or they pick up redundant idea groups like trade for more money, when actually they already have enough money. What do I mean by this? Well, how much money do you actually need? Like, enough money to achieve your goals, not enough money to sit at 50k ducats in 1650 going, I don't know what to spend this on money. It's a lot less than you think it is. You don't need 10k ducats a month for a one faith. You can afford a +3 advisor on 100 ducats a month, and you can afford +5 advisors on 500 ducats a month, aka half of economic hegemon. An income of 100 ducats a month, assuming just 4% loans and no other shenanigans, already gives you 30k ducats of loan cap to work with. At 500 a month, you can afford 150,000 total debt, and that's assuming the worst kind of 4% loans with no interest reductions again. But surely, more money is just good, right? More money means you can build every building, you can build every monument, and go look at that pretty money sit in the top left of your screen. Well, we have to consider the opportunity cost. That really is it. Firstly, building slots used on temples and workshops are building slots you're not using for force summit camps or manpower buildings, for example, and not building those things can delay things like military hegemon compared to people that go ahead and build them. Manufactories can be an even worse case for this, as using up a manufactory slot on an expensive money manufactory can deprive you of a good location for example, a state house, which will help you with your gov cap. It is true that you can delete your temples when they get out of date, but bear in mind with the 100 ducat cost, a 0.1 temple would need 100 years to pay for itself. So assuming you build your 0.1 temple in, say, 1475, if you delete the temple before 1575, the temple strictly speaking loses you money. Of course that isn't the full story. 0.1 income per month, as mentioned previously, does give you 30 ducats more loan cap, and positive events like Gold Rush as well as things like selling Crown Land will give you more money because your income is higher. But I do think you see the point, and optimizing for money only to end up making less money is a quite sad twist of irony. The other part of this coin is, of course, as previously mentioned, loans. People overscale their economy and don't use their debt capacity enough. And again, just because you can take a loan usually doesn't mean you should, but at the same time, not taking out loans to build a 0.5 workshop, for example, straight up loses you money, as the income from the building is greater than the interest you would have spent on it. Another case, and it's a more of an indirect example, but something I see far too often, is that, let's say hypothetically you have 20k force summit and you built a force summit. You see an AI nation next to you with 20k troops, and because it's an AI nation, it's probably got 30 force summit and it's sitting at 20k. You could find them 20k and 20k, take a bunch of casualties, recover your casualties, spend more manpower and time on the fair fight, go chase after their total 30k they eventually build to, take good battles, and eventually come out just barely on top. Or you could go 10k over force summit, spend around 300 to 500 ducats in total for being over said force summit, but then you win the war faster, you spend less time paying for troops, you waste less manpower on the fighting, and in fact I would say you probably squeeze in another war during the time that you saved fighting this bigger, longer war, meaning that you gain more land and of course more money upfront from the direct peace deals, from war reps and from everything else, keeping your juggernaut going. Not going over force summit to comfortably win every single war you're taking is a bad thing for your economy. So how much money do you need? 50 to 100 ducats of income is enough to comfortably run reasonable level advisors, and complete most medium to hard achievements. 500 ducats is enough for +5s in critical buildings like good state houses, courthouse spam when necessary, and 3k ducats a month is enough to fund a world conquest, as you would want to upgrade certain monuments and things. Only 5k ducats a month you can reasonably afford to build cathedrals in every province for one faith, and build even the bad monuments since they never, strictly speaking, hurt your nation, while also being able to afford the monetary hits of most bad events without much detriment. Income beyond 5k a month is nice, and I mean it never hurts, but it's a case of vanity. There's literally nothing to spend it on unless you are playing super optimally and already overexceeding force summit, in which case you probably didn't need this video already. But remember, debt isn't inherently bad, and don't waste building slots or idea groups on money when you probably already have enough money for your goals. Past 5k ducats a month, 5k ducats or 50k ducats or 500k ducats a month is going to play the game in exactly the same way. The issue of I need money is now just solved, and hence the actual physical number of income becomes meaningless. And if you are prepared to manage your money, even 50 to 100 ducat incomes are super achievable, and they're more than enough for a good chunk of the goals you are setting in this game. More money is never bad, but it can certainly be pointless. But indeed, that is all the time I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching, with a special thank you to all my channel members, especially Ark, Stola, W Haste, Salemon, Star72, Lord Zendikar, Nick Fassbender, and Hatan, Nick Huss, The Awesome Rabbit, Bestral Gaming, Grandma Flavia, Sov, Mobkiller, Anthony35, AC Napo, Glorious Leader, Frankie, Yukata, Danre, Private Claw, Jack, Malvi, Conspiracy Pizza, and Labarule.